emcee Zothile Langa, known to his fans as Solo, is back with his latest offering titled We Need a Title. How's that, eh? The singer, writer and emcee, whose music career was inspired by artist Kabomo, describes his album as soulful amongst the banger-driven South African hip-hop flair. Well, this morning we talked to him about his music and more. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Why the name Solo? I mean, Sam and I were talking about it earlier, about how hip-hop artists just come up with these names. Why Solo?
You know, Solo is actually a hip-hop name that stuck with me from when I was still in primary school. But essentially, it does come from the definition of solo in music. So a musical piece that's not assisted by any kind of instrumentation or anything. So it's about having a voice that speaks on its own. And yeah, that's essentially where the name comes from.
Okay, so let's rewind the tape a little bit. Where did this musical journey begin?
Yeah, I think it was actually in my primary school life. I'm the last born of a family of two other siblings. And you know and they're much older than me. My brother's 10 years my senior, my sister's 7 years my senior. So for the most part, they introduced me to what they were listening to at the time, which just so happened to be hip hop. And and I think that's how I fell in love with it.
It says here like you worked with No Tender, Proverb, Butumi as well.
Yes.
How did that come about?
I think that would have been through Kabomo, who is initially the person who opened the doors for me. I guess he stumbled on work that I'd put out in about 2010, and he was actually a fan of that, which took me aback because I was really just kind of putting it out in my wet behind the ears stage, and we started making music together. I started building a project under his guidance, and he introduced me to these other artists who actually enjoyed what I did as well. So,
is this Tumi and the Volume?
That's correct.
And I mean, he's big in this hip hop industry.
He really
he's
is
one of the respected ones in this industry. What did you learn from him and all these other hip hop people that you interacted or worked with? The Proverbs, What did that teach you about your love for this genre of music?
What it taught me was that having your own voice and standing firm behind it is actually the secret to longevity, which is exactly what I'm chasing. I think it's exactly what myself and my team are chasing. So we tend to focus on that primarily. And a lot of that came from, the shadowing of those artists.
Let's talk about this album. We Need a Title. Who did you work with? It's such a cool title, though.
Thank you. Well, look, I just need to clarify this. This is actually a dual album between myself and Books, the other artist that's mentioned. There are no features on this project. It's literally it's 11 tracks, and it's myself and Books. Going into the history of what Books has done. Books is behind some of the country's largest hip-hop songs in terms of production. He's on production for this whole project as well. And, I guess people are actually being introduced to the seasoned rapper that he is as well. But this was essentially us launching our team, Better Gang, BETR, standing for Body Everything Right. So we play around with words, as you can see. But our whole motive here was to put out our unique voice, undiluted. Hence, it was myself and him, no features at all.
What is a person going to find on this album?
I think what people will find on this album is music that isn't necessarily what you're hearing today. And it's also unapologetic about that. We understand what the trends are. It's also not about, purposefully staying away from that versus that's not our sound, So, often there will be the trend and the trends that come about, and, as an artist, you might feel the need to tap into those just to stay relatable and all of that. This is again an undiluted voice. So you might find that it's not necessarily the sound that you're constantly hearing.
And I'm hearing that now that you're saying that it's undiluted and it's not. You don't want to diss other hip hop artists by saying this.
You don't.
It's not as commercial, but it's more, is it deep? I don't know how to even contextualize it. And is it that because you've worked with the Dumis and the proverbs that sound comes from there?
Well, look, I can safely say that it isn't even that sound, you know? So by saying it's an undiluted sound, whether the most popular or not popular sound, it's not a sound that exists. I think that's what we're trying to tap into. So as much as it's quote unquote not the commercial sound, it's not the Dumi and verb sound either. It's
the solo sound.
It's the solo and book sound. It's the Better Gang sound.
Okay.
And until you hear it, I think you know, you can't necessarily make a distinction until you hear it. Until it,
I can live with that. Solo, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Solo talking to us about his new work, We Need a Title. All right, we'll talk to him. But in fact, he'll perform for us 2 more times before we get our second music guest in the studio. All right, after this, we talk about the lineup for 2016 for Joburg Theatre. Let's take a break. Stay with us.